Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, and I am joined by Randy Dumalig. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Absolutely. No, this will be fun.
Yeah. So Randy is a Warriors fan, a really hardcore Warriors fan who I guess met on Twitter. I mean,
yeah, more or
we
less.
started following
right?
each other, and I'm not that active on Twitter, but you are. And I just, I see your tweets and I'm like, okay, like these takes. I like what this guy talks about. I wanted to talk a Warriors preview, Western Conference preview, but first, I always ask new Warriors fan guests, tell me about your Warriors fandom, like when you became a fan, what it's been like for you, because you're of the younger breed, so you kind of have a different experience from me.
A little bit, man. Yeah. So when I was growing up, I guess in grade school, right, I had what I would say is like a football dad and a baseball mom, but I had a basketball uncle. So I had an uncle who was always into the Warriors, always into Gilbert Arenas, Monte Ellis, guys that I didn't necessarily watch, full games and analyze, as a kid. But they were kind of household names. And when we would see them, he'd always talk about how the Warriors were doing. And like I was saying before we started our call, before we started recording, I was sort of a Jeremy Lin convert. So in 2011, 2012, that lockout season, when Jeremy Lin hit the floor, and it was just crazy. I didn't even know how to describe it. I was coming home at 4 p.m. to watch 7 p.m. Knicks games. Like, my mom would never put on basketball beforehand. But it was, I didn't understand necessarily back then, but it was a cultural thing. That was huge for me and a lot of other people. And that was my end to basketball. I think after that, I started joining the school teams. I played in 7th, 8th grade, tried to play in high school, didn't play too well, but I always watched. So I've pretty much been a fan since then. I would say, who was on the roster for the Warriors at that time? We had just traded Monte. So I remember in middle school, I had a 6th grade teacher who was a huge Bucks fan. And so I remember being in class with him and him coming up to me and be like, we just traded Andrew Bogut. We got Monte Ellis. He was briefing the class on this trade that had just gone down. And that was kind of maybe the start of that first season that I really started watching. And I think by 2012, definitely by the time they hired, or by the time they made that first round against the Clippers when they lost in 7, that whole season I had watched pretty much in full.
So you live the charmed life, man.
I know, man. I see it all the time. I mean, I guess the worst I can remember back is like the Vlad Radmanovic days. That's, again, just like uncle and not necessarily my watching, but I never had, O'Donnell Foyle or any of those guys.
Bimbo Coles, none of those dudes. That's cool, man. So I said earlier that you're pretty active on Twitter, and I enjoy your tweets and everything. But let me just ask you, like, how long have you been on Warriors Twitter, and what is the deal with Warriors Twitter, man?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll talk about, oh man, this is so relevant. With NBA Twitter at large, right? It's just, Twitter is this crazy place. It's like not real and incredibly relevant at the same time. But I got on NBA Twitter right around the beginning of the pandemic. So maybe that first, basketball shut down. I wasn't on it during the bubble, but when they had started back up, right after we had drafted Wiseman, basically, I initially made my account. I was what people call a stan account, right? Which is just like a fake name, fake profile picture, just kind of lurking and tweeting whatever. Did that for a while, just for fun, just watching the games with random people and reacting to different plays, making memes, trash talking other players. It's all just fun. It's all kind of a community. It gets toxic at times. I know that there are always bad fans, right, in every fan base. And you never want the people wishing for injury or, any of that type of stuff. But no, Twitter's really fun. I like how self-referential it is, right? There are jokes that'll get thousands and thousands of likes on Twitter that if you show to a normal person, it just wouldn't be funny. Like, you just had to have seen a certain like set of threads and certain things. You got to know what have been going on.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Do you get into like arguments with people? Because like it seems like you're pretty, like you just roll with Twitter or whatever. But like a lot of times you'll see like the arguments about even just this past off season, like people flipping their lids over letting Gary Payton walk, losing Otto Porter Jr. People just literally just like knee jerk, just losing their minds and everything. And Twitter ain't real life. We know that.
of course,
But
yeah.
do you get involved in those at all, or are you just kind of like, man, that's not my
Yeah.
thing?
I would say ironically, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna be like furiously typing like boycott this, resign, Bob Myers should resign. I mean, I think I see them and they're funny. Like it's just people being
Yeah,
reactionary. And I think that's why I love Twitter, is because everything is so in the moment. You can refresh your timeline every 10 seconds and get
yeah,
20 new things coming up. It's really addicting. It's bad. But
yeah, yeah.
but during the season, right, it leads to a lot of great moments. You build some random friendships, and you just end up watching these games and developing you appreciate different small things, and you find another group of people, people who
Yeah,
appreciate Kevon Looney setting screens, or it's not always people who are just like hurry for three, or it's not, there are some people who actually know their stuff. If
yeah. Yeah, yeah, totally. Moving on, like the news, we're recording this on Friday, the day before Warriors training camp starts, and just touch on it real quick. Like Andre Iguodala announced on his Point Forward podcast that he's coming back to the Warriors. He says for one more year.
season
I don't know,
19.
yeah, which is like Jonathan Kuminga's age.
That's crazy.
I kind of felt like it made sense for him to come back. I never really had any huge doubts. How do you feel about him coming back? And somebody on Twitter I just saw talked about how folks had said, "Oh, I prefer Andre to come back as a coach," which I think is kind of silly, to even
Yeah,
like think that. But like, how do you feel about Andre?
I love him. I mean, he's a Warrior favorite. I remember having his jersey actually. The first season he had signed way back after the Denver series. I remember him coming in, and this is a bit of a sidetrack. That was like a really important period for me. I was watching a lot of basketball. I remember that's when I like start remembering specific plays and moments and like runs. And right before he'd gotten hurt, he was shooting like 37-40% from three that early that season.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
but anyways, no, I love Iguodala coming back. I think that it's all that intangible value, right? For Moody, for Kuminga, for Wiseman, even to take kind of some of the burden off of Steph, Clay. It's just veteran leadership. You can't really replace that, especially with someone who has been in the organization, knows the system, knows how everything's supposed to go. They couldn't have filled that spot with a better guy. So
They have so many young dudes. Getting Andre back was so important because he counts for like three old dudes.
no, yeah, he
In terms
does.
of, they've never won a championship without him. He's part of their core four, and he can talk to Steph, Clay, Draymond. He can talk to Kerr, and he can teach these young guys how to be pros. So I think probably other fans of other teams outside of the Warriors fan base don't get what he brings. I don't even care if he plays 30 games again, I just want
Right.
him to be back and be able to like, that one clip that went around of him talking to Andrew Wiggins and like telling him to come over to the bench during the finals and like kind of shouting at him, and then after they won giving him a big hug. Like that's the stuff, and the
Definitely.
idea that, yeah, I mean, we already know how much of an influence he's had on Poole, and yeah, that's just stuff you can't teach. And yeah, I'm super happy about that. One more random thing before we get into the preview stuff is like, I just wanted to touch on, and not too deeply at all, but like all of a sudden the Celtics have had like the worst offseason I could
Oh
have
my
ever
God,
imagined.
dude.
And I don't want to laugh at like their personal, like the whole whatever went on and stuff, but just like literally lost their coach. They signed Gallinari. He was gone a while ago. And then I didn't even realize Robert Williams was having surgery.
Yeah, no, it's been a real, they were flying high. They got Brogdon, Gallinari, they were basically running it back, right? They got everyone from the championship team. They'd made the finals, and Udoka's rookie year as a coach. And it's just really unfortunate, man. Cast a cloud over what should be a really good team, right? I mean, you still have to expect them to make home court in the East, right? Regardless, I mean, just with that roster and that collection of
Yeah.
talent, I can't see them finishing out of the top four. But even then, that's a huge hit. It's a huge scandal. I think it was mishandled by a lot of people on Twitter, in the media.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, man, you just hope it plays its course and everyone settles down.
Yeah, I mean that's where Twitter's toxicity kind of stood up tall. Okay, that's enough of that. That's enough. Anyway, so the crux of this episode is doing talking about the season ahead, and let's make some predictions. Like, so basically I want to go playoff teams and then play-in teams and all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah.
Let's start at the very top. Like, who do you have as number one?
I mean, I don't want to be a homer, man. Like, of course I want to pick the Warriors. I want them to win. I want them to win another ring. But there are a lot of good teams in the West this season. I think it's interesting because all the teams that were really active during the offseason weren't necessarily the ones that got better the most, right? You had at least 3 teams with guys coming back completely healthy that are going to be automatically better than they were last year, right? Mm-hmm. Denver, the Clippers, New Orleans with Zion.
Yeah.
And all 3 of those, especially those first 2, could be playoff teams. If the Warriors aren't the 1 seed, I could see either Denver or the Clippers. I think in the first season back, if Paul George and Kawhi, if Jamal Murray, Michael Porter, they already had that chemistry with Jokic in the bubble. You look on them to expand on that. And the regular season is the time for them to beat up on bad teams. And, I'm not saying that they haven't been proven in the playoffs, but this is the time for them to win and prime their teams for that. I think the Warriors, if anything, would be comfortable with 3 or 4 or 5, depending on obviously where the health is. That's really the key, right? As we saw last season.
This shows me that you're a thoughtful Warriors fan because you understand this Warriors team. They proved it, and we just know it, that like it's about how they finish. It's about being healthy when the playoffs start and getting everybody up to speed, like the young guys and everything. And so you're like, oh, the Warriors could be 3 or 4, but I'm asking you, who's your number one? who's your definitive number one?
I think it's Denver, man. I Jokic is crazy. I mean, I just can't. He's almost indescribable. It's so fun to watch. He's really polarizing on Twitter. Honestly, their accounts dedicated to spreading all of his awesome stats, and then there are also accounts who are like, just preying on all the criticisms that he's had throughout his career. I think he's a great player, and I think Denver's primed to get a good season going.
Are you expecting Michael Porter Jr. to come back strong? Like, I think that's the big question mark for me. I think Jamal Murray with an ACL will be fine, but Michael Porter Jr. is the big question mark for me. And then who they got in the fringes.
I know that they turned Monty Morris and Will Barton into Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They still have some of their kind of bench guys. Bones Highland, Zeke Naji is still on the team. But I mean, I'm just expecting Jokic to be in the MVP running. I expect Murray to be, clear-cut second best player. Something that Jokic didn't have last season, right? It was kind of him as the first option and whoever he could create for. I just feel like the hierarchy kind of plays out really naturally there. Okay. I do think Michael Porter's kind of their barometer, though. I think that if he's I think if he plays more than 60 games, they'll be a top 2 seed. If he's relatively healthy.
Okay.
That's the big if, though. I mean, it's always been his health, right?
That's that is a big if, especially since they gave him a max contract. And it's funny, right? Because that was the big question mark going into his draft, and he survived for a while, and then when he signed that contract is when it came back, right? Ultimately, is it going to be worth it for them? Okay, I like that choice. I like the non-homerism, man. I can appreciate that. Who do you have at number 2?
I'm pretty stuck. I think that I have Phoenix dropping quite a bit just because
same here.
Not because of anything on their roster. I just think that I mean, maybe they'll come back with a vengeance and they'll win 60 games again. But I really think that just the West is getting so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if they improved a lot over the offseason,
Mm-hmm.
at least significantly enough to maintain that one spot. But so Phoenix isn't in the top four for me. I'd say at the two spot, it's between the Warriors and the Clippers. So I mean, I could talk about the Clippers first because again, that's another team with injuries
Yeah.
that are finally starting to heal and recover. They add John Wall, right? They
Mm-hmm.
still have Reggie Jackson. They still have obviously Kawhi, PG, really solid big man in Ivica Zubac. It's just a solid roster. I mean, the Clippers it was the Clippers and Lakers a few years back that was hyped up to be this huge thing, but we've seen since then. I think the Clippers kind of starting to separate themselves. Um, so I'm probably going to pick the Clippers at two. Again, I don't want to see them in the playoffs, but it is a matchup we haven't seen in a while. I'd love to see Kawhi and Paul George again,
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah, I mean the Clippers are definitely a team that worry me. I think that, like you're saying about the Suns, I mean the Suns had the best record last year, largely because everybody was hurt. I mean the Warriors finished at what, three, because so many of their guys were hurt. Draymond was gone for like 3.5 months. Steph missed the end of the season. So like,
Right.
it's not so much an indictment of the Suns as like you're saying. It's about like, okay, well, everybody was hurt, so
Yeah.
congratulations. Uh, let's see if you're actually really that good. And I'm on the same page. I don't think they're as good. The Clippers. Um, I'm really curious to see how they play Kawhi, how they manage him. Like
Yeah.
after all of his San Antonio stuff, after that injury and everything, and then missing all this
Definitely.
time. I'm very curious to see how often he plays. Kawhi is it's obvious to say he's kind of a key to them, but the thing is too, it's like to me, he's also the winner on that team. You know what I mean? He is the
Yeah.
guy that wins, who has won. And I look at Paul George, and he catches a lot of flack. People forget like how good he was when he first came into the league, how he battled LeBron, how he was like in the MVP race with the Pacers, and then how he came back from that broken leg. Um,
Yeah.
all they remember is playoff P and hitting the side of the backboard.
Yeah, I still see that ad that was it Gatorade or Mount? I think it's Gatorade. He's like ball game, and he slams the bottle down,
Yeah.
and you just they edit that with all these misses. It's horrible. It's brutal. But that's
Yeah,
Twitter. Yeah,
I can see the Clippers, landing. Obviously, they got a lot of talent, and I think it's definitely a question of, I said this in the Eastern Conference preview that I put out a couple days ago. It's like which teams feel the need to prove a point and feel the need to try to like have the best record and get that seeding. The Warriors have the confidence not to. But I
right,
feel like some of these teams are like, we got to be number two, we got to be number one, because we haven't won anything yet. And
right.
I think the Clippers may be up there with that. I'm also curious to see how my guy BJ Boston plays, because he was my dark horse in the 2021 draft. I was like, he's got the same pedigree as Zaire Williams out of Sierra Canyon. Had a bum year in Kentucky during the heart of the pandemic. So
Right.
he's proven to be decent, but probably a couple years away still. Um, anyway, who you got at three?
I'll put the Warriors solidly at three. I think if they're healthy, um, they're I think they could approach. I mean, it's 50 is almost out of the question. I'll knock on wood for that. But
Mm-hmm.
if they're healthy, I think 50 is in grasp. I think three is a really reasonable place to put them. Given that, if they're following recent trends, they're going to rest guys on back to backs. They're going to rest the vets. They're, they know we know that this regular season is not the most important time of the year for them.
Yeah.
It's the most important for the young guys, but like Myers and like Kerr had said yesterday on their press conference, the top six on the team are already figured out.
Mm-hmm.
So we know how that's going to play out. Maybe Wiseman cracks the rotation, but that's a bunch of hurdles later. So
Yeah.
I think that's all. The starting lineup is solidified. Again, if they're healthy, it's 50 at least.
Yeah.
I think three.
Do you think the Warriors have improved?
I think that they've kind of retooled, right? I was talking to my friend about this yesterday, how we had a few really interesting, unique skill sets last year, right? I mean, the first one being obviously GP2, where he on defense is super switchable. You know, he's guarding point guards, even wings, but on offense, he's playing the role of a big man. He's in the dunker spot. He's cutting. Um, you know, the shooting is, I think, there, but that wasn't a fundamental part of his game. I think you sort of split that by signing JaMychal Green and DiVincenzo, where
Mm-hmm.
DiVincenzo is a better shooter than GP2, but he's not as athletic. Defense might, he's solid, but I don't know if he'll necessarily be at that level. But the shooting is a plus. Whereas with JaMychal Green, I think he kind of takes the remainder of that Gary Payton role and a little bit of the auto role as well, depending on how the rookies play. So just sort of an interior guy. Otto was grabbing all these contested rebounds last year. That's totally a JaMychal Green role. Play, do the dirty work, just hustle, right? Those I think are really great veteran additions. That I think they'll. I wouldn't say that the Warriors, jump to any place in the power rankings. I don't know where that would necessarily be, but if they're already top 2 or 3 favorites to repeat as champions. I mean, they had just won a few months ago. Definitely.
I think they've improved. I mean, it's that obviously you hope for quote unquote internal development, which was a phrase probably before your time that they would talk about in the 90s when they had the Donald Foyles, the Antoine Jamesons, and when they wouldn't get anybody in trades or free agency and be like, oh, we're working on internal development. Like I was like, that became like a thing before Twitter. Yeah, it rides a lot on the young dudes. I expect good things from them. I mean, you'd put a tweet out asking about like Moody, Wiseman, Kuminga, who's gonna make the biggest leap, and it's really all situational to me, right? To me, it's like Wiseman from 0 to anything. It's a pretty magnificent leap. And we all know, and it's been well said that like Kuminga so far has like the highest ceiling, and I've been on record to say like last season that I think he'll be the Warriors' best player 4 years from last summer. So that's like when like 2 seasons from now. So you better start showing me some point forward skills. And with Moody, it's a thing where he's pretty clear on what his role is, and he's such a professional, just like comes to work with this briefcase kind of thing, and he knows how to I feel like he's more trusted and whatnot. But I'm just looking forward to seeing all those guys on the court. I mean, like I say this all the time, like as a longtime Warriors fan, I've always loved homegrown talent. Like when you draft that guy, because a lot of times we wouldn't get a guy. We would draft somebody who was like, who would flame out, and then getting a Chris Webber. Like I had like, whether it is Weber or Sprewell, I was a huge Sprewell fan as a kid. And then having Gilbert Arenas, that was one of the biggest heartbreaks of my life. That was like pinnacle Warriors, just bad luck and bad management type stuff. So like when I see these dudes, it's like these are our guys, and you just want them to succeed. And sometimes it clouds your judgment, but like I believe in these dudes, and I think that you already talked about, and I've talked about this before too, like GP2 and DiVincenzo and JaMychal Green and Otto Porter Jr. Neither of them are like the same, but they're both better and worse than those guys in other places, right? And in terms of the on-ball stuff that Gary Payton gives you, that he's going to give Dame Lillard now, you'll just have to figure it out, right? Like you have a healthier Clay who isn't as young or as spry, but he can give you minutes. Wiggins can give you minutes. Kuminga can give you minutes. Even though he's a bit quote unquote slow footed, Moses can give you some minutes and stuff, right? I don't know. I personally, I guess I'm the homer. I personally had them at 1 if they're fully healthy, but a lot of it remains to be seen, because they're not going to chase wins, because they know they don't have to. And it's about like a broken record all last season. I was like, the things are health at the end of the season, and getting the new guys who all have like 1 year more experience uh, acclimated to the bright lights and the pressure. And we saw Jordan Poole was ready for that. It's about getting Kuminga ready for that
Right.
and all that jazz. And then to me, it's like seeding, right? I think they have improved. You get a better Clay as well, a more confident Wiggins, but we'll see. That's why they play. That's why they play the games, I guess, right?
Yep. Yep.
Do you think since we're on the Warriors right now, what do you expect from Wiggins? Do you think that he's going to turn to a pumpkin, back into a pumpkin, or do you think he's going to, continue to excel, or he's found his role that he found in the playoffs and he's just going to settle into that?
Just from what I've been reading and seeing, I think that what I'm kind of interpreting is the sense is he likes his role. I think that he's gonna build off what he did last season. In the playoffs, really started seeing him improve on his rebounding. He was locking up guys in the finals, conference finals,
Yeah.
going against Luka, Tatum, Jaylen Brown, all these number one options, and it was great. It was super cool to see. It was so fun to support him, and I mean, it's just so, I wouldn't say improbable, but it's so like fun to see that come full circle. I remember the D'Lo trade, and I remember that whole season. I remember Kai Bowman and Dragon Bender. I mean, I watched those games, so that's probably the most suffering I've gone through willingly. That's my side note. But
that's your taste of the '90s right there.
But no, I love him on the team. I think he's gonna build off what he had last season. I don't know if he necessarily is going to score more. I think he is going to pick his spots. He really started getting to like a sort of low mid post thing, kind of a jump thing when he has the size advantage. I'd love to see that more because, you love seeing him play physically. Yeah, no, I'm positive, optimistic. Feel good about Wiggins. He's good.
There's all this chatter, right? Like the storylines that started over the summer of how are they going to keep these guys and cap space, luxury tax, all this stuff. And
Definitely.
The three people they talk about are Wiggins, Poole, and Draymond. Out of those three, who would you be okay losing? How do you think this is going to play out?
I think that Poole is the one they're most likely to lose. I'll put it that way. I think that I think even Clay is up for an extension, right? But I think Clay is a shoo-in. Wiggins, I'm optimistic on. Again, if he performs well and the team is where it should be. And, I think I just think he would stay in the situation. But with Poole, you might have seen these reports on Bleacher Report or anything on how they're going to start talking to his representatives as soon as they get back from Tokyo, right? And they're playing those first games in Tokyo versus the Wizards in a week, right? Less than a week, 6 days. So, I mean, I think if they are unable to sign Poole to an extension by the time the season starts, it's risky because I think he's going to play well. I think he's going to look really good, and he might play himself out of their budget, right? Even if he hits restricted free agency and someone throws 120 mil at him, Bob Myers is going to have to take pause and really assess where the team is going, right, in the next few seasons. They have to make a decision soon, but I think the longer they go without offering him an extension, the more likely it is that he can possibly leave the team.
I mean, he'll be restricted next summer.
Right.
So, if somebody like gives him a massive offer that the Warriors don't want to match, then that's a whole nother story. Which two would you want to keep the most in terms of like on the court stuff? Who would you be less willing to let go of?
A lot of people, I feel like, would say Draymond just because of the woes on offense that are well documented. But I mean, if I really, really had to pick him, Wiggins is probably the one whose role could be most easily reshuffled around and dispersed among whoever else they get back in some type of trade or even internally. I mean, they have someone like Kuminga or even Moody on the wings, right? I think Draymond just adds too much value defensively. I think that considering moving off him would be really, really bad. I don't like that at all. I know that, again, people are flaming his offensive woes in the playoffs and how he's not able to shoot and whatever. But I mean, you watch the last 2 games of the finals, you watch any of the playoffs from the last few years. I don't know, man. It's undeniable. I don't want to lose him off the team. So my reluctant pick would be Wiggins. But I think they again most likely to lose would probably be Poole.
Yeah, I agree. Like I've said, like it's Wiggins because they have other dudes who can play that role in the future. They're set up with
Right.
dudes like Kaminga, like Moody, who's 6'6" with a 6'11" wingspan, and Poole is so important because name me one other guy in the league who can play both Clay's position and Steph's position in the Warriors offense without missing a beat at this point, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he's obviously not them, but like who else can do that? When Steph was out, he played that role. When Clay was out, he played that role. And
Right.
defensively, sure, he needs to get better. But if you want to keep this going, and if you want to rest those older guys, then he's huge. And then also, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, the Draymond, man. Like you just like, can you imagine Steph's reaction if you let go of Draymond? You got to keep him somehow.
I think yeah, any of those three guys are kind of a package deal to me. I think any one of those OG three guys departs, and it's like a significant WTF moment, right? For the
Yeah.
front, for everyone.
Yeah, we saw like when Draymond's out for 3.5 months and they were, listless. They didn't have like who else on this team talks? Like Poole talks, but he's not Draymond. Clay
Right.
chirps a little bit, but it's just Clay. But like you need obviously the heart and soul quotes that everybody talks about.
Mhm.
Who do you got at 4?
Four is probably for me between Dallas and Phoenix. Again, Phoenix, like I said, I don't think they improved enough to maintain that one spot. I think they're falling outside the top three. Four is again, if their season goes magnificently well, if they respond, beautifully to this whole Robert Sarver controversy, to the Game 7 humiliation at the hands of the Mavericks, like a lot, I think they could be a top four team, but given what they just came out of, I'm giving it to Dallas. I think Luka is just on his way. Right? They did
Mhm.
lose Jalen Brunson and got Christian Wood, who might be coming off the bench. They have some weird rotation things to figure out, but I just think Luka, like Jokic, right? You just put guys around Luka and let him go. Again, it's regular season basketball. I don't know necessarily if he's, I'm not going to say he's going to the finals or anything. So I'm putting Luka and the Mavs at 4.
I think I have them down a little further. Before they
Yeah.
lost Brunson, I had them up there. It
Mm-hmm.
really, just I'm very curious to see how other teams play them,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, they're built for the playoffs, honestly, right? Like their thing where they go 5 out, and
Yeah.
I had no
Yeah.
idea they played like that until we saw them in the playoffs or until they beat the Suns, and I was watching them, and it's a lot to put on one guy's shoulders at this
Right.
point, and if anyone can do it, he can. But I do have my questions just because, like, who else is there? Teams are going to adapt; they'll figure
Definitely.
something out, and then he'll figure something out. But like, will it be enough? So, but I think like in general, uh, that range is decent. What do you think of the Suns' chances overall? Because for me, I think after they lost to the Mavericks, I did like a segment where I just said Suns are done. I said their window's closed
Yeah.
because of Chris Paul.
Right. I mean, he's a year older. Um,
Yeah,
he had made the finals right against Giannis, where they blew a 2-0 lead, and
yeah,
um, I think he's obviously an all-time point guard. Devin Booker is an all-star.
mhm.
Um, they have a great roster or coach. They have pieces for success. It's just in this loaded Western Conference. I don't know if that puts them over the top. I mean,
Yeah.
I could see them winning a series or maybe the semis, but I don't think they're making it past. Um, maybe not the semis actually. Yeah, one round.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. I think
I don't think they beat Denver or the Clippers.
either. I actually had them probably around 6.
Yeah.
Who's your 6?
Memphis actually. Yeah. So
Ah,
so they're gonna be again. I have them lower. They were 2. It was Phoenix Memphis, which is still crazy. Last season, but I think they're gonna slip a tiny bit in the beginning just because we don't know when Jaren Jackson's gonna be back. He had
mhm.
an off season. surgery, and I think he's out for another 6 to 8. I'm not going to put a number on it. I'm going to be totally wrong. But he's going to miss the start of the season. Is the point? And I mean, they still have Ja. They still have a lot of their guys. They did lose a few key pieces, kind of on maybe the middle of the rotation, right? Kyle Anderson, D'Anthony Melton is now on the Sixers, but again, Ja is getting better. He's young. He's improving, and they're just going to be good for a while. And I don't see a reality where they're even in the lower. I don't think they're below 6 at the lowest.
Yeah. Obviously, Jaren Jackson, as you mentioned, is like the big question mark. It's like, was it broken foot?
If he can come back healthy and stop fouling, again, he's super young. He's got a great physicals. He's going to be good for a long time. Memphis is one of those teams, right? That's just on the come up, right? New Orleans, Memphis, the Wolves, even, right? All these teams have these crazy young cores, or cores that are kind of entering their primes, or could be, sooner than later.
Yeah. Who you got at 7?
I'm between the Wolves and the Pelicans, actually. I think the Pelicans could be really good.
Yeah, they could be.
Kind of a sleeper. I love that, obviously, Zion is back. I think that putting CJ McCollum at point guard is a really interesting move for them. Brandon Ingram is there. It's an exciting time, right? You just hope that, man, that's across the whole league. You hope everyone stays healthy. But New Orleans is, up there for me. And then, of course, the Wolves, who kind of, I would say, probably had the busiest offseason, at least transaction-wise. Obviously, trading like 5-6 first-round picks and all this capital for Rudy Gobert. And that's an interesting roster as well, right? I mean, you have like the Cat, Gobert, obviously Anthony Edwards, D'Lo. I'm really between the Wolves and Pelicans on that 7 spot. Where are you at on 7?
On 7? Oh, me, I had the Suns at 7, to be honest.
Okay.
But if I'm picking between the Wolves and the Pelicans, I mean, that's honestly, it's kind of a toss up because there's so much youth like on those teams. Maybe you could say the Wolves have, Gobert is 30 and, other guys have been around, but like Anthony Edwards is such a key to that team. And I think the Wolves go as Edwards goes at this point, right? Because you know what you get from Cat. D'Lo is D'Lo, and Gobert. You get what you get from Gobert, and some teams can play him off the court. So if Edwards is the guy who can really lift them up, and he takes another leap, then I believe in his talent. But then you look at the Pelicans, and it's like, what are you going to get from Zion Williamson, right?
Right. I mean, it's one of those situations where he's played so little, but when he's played, he's been like statistically just like an anomaly. It's scoring at these historical rates and all these efficiency numbers that put him with guys like Shaq and all the crazy comparisons to be made for a guy who hasn't really played a full season, but completely warranted. I think he can be the best player from his class, obviously, and I don't know. It's really interesting to see what kind of situation they'll be in 1 or 2 months, right? You want to see what they look like to come out the gate.
And they looked good against the Suns in the playoffs last season without.
They did.
So, it's those two teams, the Wolves and the Pelicans, are really similar. I'll just say, because I'm a huge Edwards fan, and he's less of a unknown than Zion at this point. I'll say the Wolves. I'll say the Wolves.
Gotcha.
Right now. So, who you got in the play-in?
The Lakers and Blazers, right, are the two kind of obvious picks for those last 2 spots. The Blazers are interesting because I like Anthony Simons. I like Damian Lillard, obviously. Jeremy Grant. They still have Chauncey Billups at head coach. You just kind of have to see, right? They got GP2. Dame is back healthy. That's the one thing you like to see. But just don't know. They have Shaedon Sharpe, who they just drafted, who could come in off the bench and play a really important role. And there's some exciting storylines. I don't think they're a boring team, but I don't know if they're going to win at the level necessary to, take one of those top playoff spots.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And then Lakers, I don't even know what to say, man. I think I think they're on Twitter, at least they're kind of the most criticized or most laughed at. It's just the Lakers. I mean, everyone
Deservedly
loves
so.
to. Yeah, I mean, as a Bay Area guy, can't complain. But from the most objective point of view possible, or at least as I can muster, I hope they stay healthy. I hope Anthony Davis is there. I hope that Westbrook is. You see that he has a new jumper, right? If you believe that and you believe off-season workout videos,
Yeah, I got a new jumper too.
it's.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it one of the top 6 or 7 rosters, but again, you have LeBron, you have AD. It's just what can they put together at that point? Because after them too, it's Westbrook and then I would say a pretty steep fall off. They got some good guys. Lonnie Walker is there. They got our guy JTA.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A few other pieces. So, I mean, they're not going to be horrible. I mean, I think they'll win some statement games, and I think there'll be some really funny nights on Twitter where the Lakers beat the Bucks or something, and people are going to go wild. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this NBA season is every team is going to be so volatile, right? Like you're going to have some really interesting matchups almost every night.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about the Lakers is like, as much as I love to talk about the Lakers, it's really just if AD is actually healthy, which I don't believe he will be for a full season, then that's a whole different ball game. That's a different team. I don't think they're that good
Right.
because they're around the fringes. Obviously, the calculus changes completely if they trade Westbrook for a bunch of other dudes. This actually reminds me of when I was figuring out these kinds of rankings last season. Just throughout NBA history, there's been like, the 2-3 best teams, and they always dominate, and everybody else just kind of messes around and looks to win a couple games in the conference finals or something from one of these juggernauts. Recently, that's been the Warriors, Cavs. Before it was like the Lakers, and then the Bulls, and the Lakers, Celtics, all that stuff. But what you have right now, which I find so fascinating about the NBA, is that like there's so I mentioned this a lot, so hopefully it's not too repetitive, but it's like there's been such an influx of good young talent over the last few years, especially at 21 draft, that a lot of teams there are some teams that screw up, but there's so many teams that just like have picked really well, and they all have hope. And I've always said that hope is at the crux of any sports fan, right? Like you can stink, but if you have hope that you're going in the right direction, then that's all that matters. And you see that with a lot of these teams. And that's why you see teams like, the Pelicans and the Wolves, and even the Blazers, who, we all laughed at last year, and they were just done. Like they've actually made some moves, and they might have a chance to just at least get into the playoffs somehow, some way. So like that's what makes it so fascinating. And then plus, as we've both discussed, it's like these injuries, it's a whole different league now when you throw these guys back onto like these really, really top end Western Conference teams. All of a sudden it's like, Big Brother shows up, right? Like well, not like the Orwell Big Brother, like
right.
like the older brother shows up, right? And like, okay, now we're playing. So let me just like rehash your playoff and play-in teams. So you had
for sure,
the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Mavericks, the Suns. Yeah, you had Memphis, and then you had the Wolves, Pelicans. Then you went play-in with Lakers, Blazers, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's. I'll submit that. That'll be my official prediction to start the year.
Yeah, I'm gonna come after you if that's way off. No, just for the sake of argument, like this is my
awesome. Yeah, let me hear yours.
And, you can roast me for this later on. All right, I will do the homer pick and pick the Warriors at 1. I again, like this is kind of one of those picks where I don't know if they'll finish at 1 because of the way that they strategize for the season and the way they are going to conserve some of their dudes, and they will sacrifice games to rest those guys and let Wiseman, Moody, Kuminga, DiVincenzo, Poole run at it. You know what I mean? Yeah, God, I can't wait for those games. Those are the games that I'm probably going to, I watch every game, but those are the games I'm really, really going to be up for when you see Poole, Moody, Wiseman, Kuminga all in the games at the same time.
No, right? Because you remember last season with like the Spurs game, there was the New Orleans game. There were a lot of good ones. The Utah game,
Toronto
I
game.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Toronto. That's just fun. You know, it's rare that teams get an opportunity to do this, right? With having a young core like this, developing at you know what you hope is a pretty quick rate, while alongside these NBA champions and kind of dynastic players in your
Hall of Famers.
franchise. It's really really lucky to be in that spot. But
Yeah.
I could see them at one, definitely. Yeah, I like that.
I like to think of these Warriors as they're almost like a college powerhouse, but instead of like a 4-year difference between the seniors and the freshmen, it's like a 15-year age gap or something, right? But like you have like the current title contenders, and then you have like this whole like just flock of blue chip prospects,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's never really happened, and that's never happened in my fandom. Like the best Warriors in terms of the youth is when they thought they had like Antoine Jameson, Larry Hughes, or Chris Webber, Latrell Sprewell, which actually was going to be good, and then or Gilbert Arenas, Jason Richardson, and we know how that went. But I'm just kind of incredulous that they have all this talent. Obviously, it's all on paper, but just in terms of pure talent, like I'll put this Warriors team up against like any team in the league. Okay, so after the Warriors, I have Clippers at 2,
Okay.
for all the reasons that we spoke on. I have the Nuggets at 3,
Okay.
and I appreciate your Nuggets take, man, because I'm a huge Jokic fan. I love watching him play because I'm always really surprised how good he is, and it's just because like his knack for passing, his crazy behind the head shot, like from over his head. Like I
Right.
just don't know how he makes those, man. It's like there's so much movement seemingly in that shot from getting it like way back here to the release
Yeah.
point that I figure like there's a variation and it's hard to do that. But I mean, the guy has impressed me. I guess for me, and you did mention some dudes that they picked up in terms of like their bench and their supporting players, but I don't think Michael Porter Jr. will come back as much as they need him to be to get to the top spot. At 4, I had the Grizzlies,
Okay.
and that's even with Jaren Jackson out. Like it's kind of like they spooked me so much last season.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they were they have a lot of stuff going for him. I mean, Ja is electric, right? You love watching him. I think he's just good for the league. He brings good energy. He's
Yeah.
controversial. He's kind of spicy, right? Like at least like
Oh
social
yeah.
media wise, he totally like plays into that. A la Kevin Durant, right? Like all these guys who are hyper online and hyper engaged with kind of the talk around them. That's another side. That's another interesting thing to talk about another
Yeah.
time.
I used to think he was overrated. Like I just thought he's another like athletic, skinny dude. Um, and then I just saw how he actually leads a team,
Yeah.
and that's really impressive to me. He reminds me a lot of like the effect that Steph had early in his career. He's like fearless, which I can very much respect. But I do have questions about like can he sustain uh, the physicality.
Right. Yeah. You worry about.
Yeah, not so much because he gets knocked around, but like
Yeah.
because he gets up so high and he lands so hard. It's like when Derrick Rose tore his ACL. Um, Everybody talked about so much torque in his movement, and I
Right.
don't
Right.
get that deep, but like sure, I see a lot of torque with John Morant. So again, I don't want injuries for anyone, but like I want to see everybody reach their potential. But that would be one question mark for me. This is my bold pick. I have the Wolves at 5. Um,
Ooh, that's
yeah.
interesting. Do you see Edwards as kind of their clear cut best player this season, starting this season, or who do you think
Um,
kind of takes the shot for them?
I do think he takes a shot. I think after D'Lo takes a couple shots, they're going to be like, "Why is D'Lo taking a shot?" And like Twitter's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
run all over D'Lo. But I think probably Cat will be their most consistent player. But I think like I said earlier, like Edwards will be the guy that um, dictates how they go. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan. I fully believe in him. I would have been ecstatic if the Warriors got him in 2020. I was ecstatic when they got Wiseman
Uh-huh.
because I just saw, I envisioned this team with Steph and Clay. This is before the Achilles, right? Like, so it's Steph,
Mm-hmm.
Clay, with Edwards as like this insane athletic freak that we've never had. You know,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've had a couple versions, but nobody like that. And
Mm-hmm.
and just as a change of pace on off the bench and then playing a 3 guard lineup, that just blew my mind. So I believe in that dude. D'Lo, not so much. They're gonna miss Patrick Beverly, like no doubt.
I think so. Yeah. Everyone likes to clown that clip of him like tearing up and throwing his headband into the stands when they made the play in. But it's great. You love stuff like that. I like the roster a lot. I think that again, it'll be really weird to see Gobert and Towns on the same team, and just how the league is trending back towards big men in general, right? You had an era for maybe a few years where it was like hyper small ball, play your best shooters, and can you shoot, pass, and defend. But you slowly see guys like Embiid and Jokic and Giannis really just start bullying people, right? And finishing with all this efficiency. And now teams are drafting guys like Chet and drafting guys like this is a separate topic, but like Victor
Mhm.
Wembanyama, who's coming up in the draft
Yeah,
this next year, is like 7'2". I mean, you see size becoming more and more a factor for all these teams who are trying to win. And so it's
yeah.
interesting that like you were saying, you have Cat and Gobert now. Yeah, big men, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, personally, I would be fascinated by a Warriors Wolves playoff matchup in any round. You know, like
Yeah,
really, really curious. There'd be so many storylines, man. Like the trade, Wiggins, Kaminga, D'Lo, all the stories would come back out. Like the Wolves, they helped the Warriors become the Warriors, right? Like they didn't.
pretty much. Yeah, I mean, they passed on stuff, right? If you go back that far, it's their franchises are intertwined, right?
Yeah.
What was it, Rubio and Johnny Flynn before Steph Curry? Everyone knows.
Yeah, and
That's
then
funny.
the idea of Kevin Love for what, some combo of Clay, Barnes, Draymond, David Lee.
I remember Clay was like the deal breaker there. They wouldn't trade Clay. That was a Jerry
Yeah.
West. That was a Jerry
Yep.
West call, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love Jerry West.
Yes, that was huge. I'm really really bummed. Like Jerry West had whatever all that drama, and he ended up leaving because he was like the. I remember like when he came to the Warriors, I was like, this dude wins. You know, everywhere
Yeah,
he's gone, he wins. He, to me, he's the greatest Laker of all time because beyond the on court stuff, he created like the the versions of the Lakers that we saw a lot of times. You know,
definitely. Yeah.
and look what he's done with the Clippers. Damn it! But like,
Yep.
let's see what I got left. Mavericks, I got at 6. Just again, like some of the same questions that I have about supporting cast and how they'll function and how teams will play against them. The Suns, I have at 7 because I think that Chris Paul, like he's gonna run out of steam. He's not gonna make it through a full playoffs, but like in the regular season, maybe he'll get some rest. But I don't know. I think there's just going to be a drop off. You know, like
Yeah.
the remnants of last season. Everybody could say they're past it. Hayton can say he's good, but
Right.
there was a little bit of that fraudulence with the Suns last season.
Yeah.
I see that manifesting a little bit more. I'm not going to say they stink, but they won't be
Yeah.
as good for sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
Pelicans, I got at 8 again, depending on what kind of Zion they get. I got the
Yeah.
Lakers at 9. I actually had the Blazers/Kings at 10, but
I hope the Kings make it. I'd like to see the
yeah,
Kings and Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, old friend Harrison Barnes. Like,
yeah,
they got some interesting pieces too. They drafted Keegan Murray, right? They have Kevin Herter from last kind of trade deadline.
yeah,
Yeah, man, who knows? I'd love to see the Kings break that drought. That'd be really, really heartwarming, actually.
yeah. Vivek's obsession with the Warriors is crazy to me. right? Like how many Warriors coaches has he hired, and how many guys has he taken to try to replicate the Splash Brothers? Like,
Yeah, who did they
like
have? Damian Jones. Well, they a bunch of old Warriors, but also yeah, like you were saying.
Stauskas, Nick
Yeah.
Stauskas,
Oh
uh,
man, that's a
Buddy
good one.
Hield. Like they're just like, oh yeah, he's just like Clay. You know,
Yeah, Jimmer Fredette. Jimmer Fredette.
and then
That's funny.
the one guy that I thought was the key to breaking their curse was Halliburton.
Halliburton, right? Yeah. And they traded him to
Yeah,
Indiana.
yeah.
I like Halliburton a lot. I like Halliburton a lot. I think, Indiana. I wish he had stayed in Sacramento, but who knows?
Okay, so let me just run down mine real quick. So it's Warriors,
Yeah.
Clippers, Nuggets, Grizzlies, Wolves, Mavs, Suns, Pelicans, Lakers, Blazers. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. And these kinds of things are silly because we have no idea who's
No,
going
of
to get
course.
hurt.
Yeah.
And we don't know like who's going to come back whole. But it's always a fun exercise. Let me ask you like one final thing. What are you looking forward to this season besides like kind of the obvious stuff? Is there anything kind of random or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think that we saw in the postseason was obviously the Warriors won the title without having much of a center rotation. It was Looney who was epic, pulling down all these boards, and Draymond, of course, being the defensive quarterback basically, and just calling all these things out from basically the center position. But they didn't. I mean, they faced Jokic, and like I was talking about earlier, right? It's at least for the Warriors, it's just how does Wiseman really fare against those type of guys, right? I know you're not going to expect him to beat them or even perform super well, but it's just how does he adapt? Does he shy away from contact? Is he going to kind of almost lean into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of like a facet of his game. Um, yeah, just a little seeing how they play against a little more size and physicality. I'd love to see him against a team like the Bucks or the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I guess specifically with kind of internally, there's sort of a rotation battle, right, going on for those kind of 7, 8, 9 spots in Kerr's rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, DiVincenzo and Jermichael Green are going to get minutes, right? They're going to be the vets, dependable guys. Um, but I'm just looking for, out of Moody, Kuminga, and Wiseman, which one or two even would have, the most growth to show. But that's everyone's answer, right? A lot of youth, a lot of excitement. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
it's shaping up to be a great season, man. I'm really glad that all the teams are healthy. Um, it's just good, man. It feels good. It feels good to be
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
basketball again.
Yeah, no, it feels great. I'm like getting into mental basketball shape, not physical basketball shape, just mental basketball shape. Uh, I think on Wiseman tip, man, like my criticism of him, I'm a huge Wiseman stan and apologist, and I just my one thing is like, does he have enough dog in him? And I want to
Yeah,
see that. That's my big question about him. And because when he got hurt on that dunk, when he got swatted by Kenyon Martin Jr., who's like 6'4", 6'6", or something. Wiseman is strong, but he wasn't powerful on that. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So I want
yeah.
to see if he really, really is that dude. I hope so, because if I were him, I would be so like annoyed with all the doubters, that you just want to like take it out on people. And then with Kaminga, again, because I have so much belief in that dude. I just want to continue seeing him like match up against the best wings. I'm really curious about seeing him play against Kawhi,
Mm-hmm.
um, just to see how he holds up because that's the comp, right? People
Pretty
have been
much,
saying
yeah,
that about people have been saying that about Kaminga since before the G League, before his G League stint on the G League Ignite. I just want to see these dudes grow, and so I want to see him play against like Jaylen Brown some more. I want to see him play against Jason Tatum.
yeah.
I wish I could watch practice and see him play against Andrew Wiggins. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
those are the because I love looking for those for matchups. That's when I used to go to games as a kid. Like
Yeah,
I would go watch a bad team to go watch like the guy they just drafted play against Spreewell or something like that. And
yeah.
and that's what makes it exciting for me. Whew. All right, man. Thanks for coming on. It was good to meet you in person and or meet you virtually in person, and good to talk.
Nah, man. Really appreciate you having me on. I mean, I'll shout out my Twitter, right?
Yeah,
At random NBA.
spell it.
RANDUM NBA. Yeah, man. My name's Randy Dumalig. It was a pleasure being on. This has been great. Warriors basketball around the corner, dude.
Yeah.
Less than a week away.
All right, man. Well, that is another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Patrick Epino, Epino, or at Oakland Warriors. You can find Aram at Aram Collier, AramCollier. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Oakland Warriors. Check us out, oaklandwarriors.com, and be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen. The Oakland Warriors podcast is produced by National Film Society and is a part of the Basketball Podcast Network. And if you're so inclined, please do leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, and leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. That is always super duper helpful. That's it. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time, and go Dubs.